Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with episode number 4 of Hebrew for Fun and Profit with Gabriel Sanders from Queens, New York. Welcome to the show again, Gabriel. We missed you last week. I know you had some pressing issues that came up, and I'm glad everything worked out well.
Life was in session. So.
as it sometimes does.
I'm starting my little iPad stopwatch here, by the way. So
okay, that's perfect.
So shalom aleichem to everyone,
Aleichem shalom.
That's not a halo over my head here. That's just a light, and then there's a fan going above there to circulate some air. So I wish, but I gave up the halo a long time ago. So what can I say?
Funny.
I'm just plain vanilla me, no sprinkles.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been kind of fun going through the first few episodes. The first one, of course, because it had your testimony, it had a lot of hits. People really want to know a lot about you. And then hopefully they'll maintain their interest as we move on and get further into learning the Hebrew. And please share with me real quickly, you said something a few minutes ago about possibly having a separate show strictly for beginners, which
I really do. Right. This is, as I say to my students at the high school where I teach, please don't look to me to teach you Hebrew. I can't do that any more than, as we said in the first show, I can't do that any more than a fitness coach can give you muscles. You have to give yourself those muscles, and you really learn Hebrew, you assimilate it, internalize it through a process that I can guide you in. But I certainly can't, unscrew the cranium, under the yarmulke and deposit the words. That's just not going to happen. So it doesn't have to be a difficult process, but it does have to be a consistent, steady, cumulative process. And that I can guide people in. So what we're doing in these segments is really kind of broad brushing various aspects of Hebrew language as it relates to the scriptures, the Jewish scriptures. We're also showcasing different places for you to go online and find interesting self-enrichment resources. We're going to talk about a couple of those today as well. Because everyone, as it says in the book of Proverbs, Chanech et hanoar al pi darko. Solomon said to educate a child, we usually say in the English, in the way he should go, but the phrase al pi darko really means according to his way. And that means that it's incumbent on any educator and on any parent and anyone that has an influence on a growing young person to ascertain what is that person's best method for learning. We know the classic studies that have been done related to auditory learning versus visual learning versus kinesthetic touch-based learning. And some people have a dominant and subdominant modality for learning like that. And I'm sorry, it's maybe a little too pedagogical, but these are the things that educators and parents have to think about as far as, because if you try to take an auditory approach for someone who's a visual learner or vice versa, you're going to run into resistance and an unproductive experience. So I'm, through these sessions, exposing you to various methods and opportunities to find the way that works best for you. Because that's really, there is no perfect method. There's simply the method that works best for you. And I'm going to tell you right now, the method for everybody that works absolutely the best, I do have one method that will absolutely satisfy everybody's need to learn Hebrew very quickly. And that's go, do what I did, live in Israel for 6 months or more, immerse yourself. I was in a program where I studied 4 hours a day, and we worked in Hebrew 4 hours a day. I worked in this awful, noisy paper factory. It was just, I had scummy work that I had to do, but I learned a tremendous amount. And so if anybody can do that through an immersion method, that's a great thing. A secondary kind of backup to that is that there are programs around the country, often during the summer, either university related or there's one here in the city. There's one coming up in December where you could come for a week and give yourself a full week that's really equivalent to a semester's worth of learning. So if you want to know more about that, we talked about that a couple of episodes ago. And any of the things that we're talking about or you're curious about, any questions related to Hebrew, I'll give you my email at the end. You're welcome to get in touch with me. Nice. I just, because of my teaching at the high school, I've spent, I can't count how many hours. They would probably equal a few days of research that I've done to find meaningful places for what my students need. I have in my classes, by the way, you'd be interested to know this, in my high school classes, I have sometimes some kids who are pretty much native speakers. In other words, they're being raised in homes where Hebrew is spoken because their parents are Israeli. and then others that their parents really care about it and they practice Hebrew in the home, and then others who haven't really a clue. So I have all levels in there, and I try to find different, again, resources, al pi darko, according to each one's stated need and ability. So that's that. Anything else you want to talk about before we get into things today?
No, just other than the fact that you're going to you'll be taking us through some of this website you mentioned earlier, yes. which actually I was already very impressed with to begin with.
It's fun,
and also just for the ones who have been curious and they have already requested this before, are there PDFs along with all of these? And of course, the answer is we will give you the email address. You'll see it up on the screen in just a little bit. In fact, I could go ahead and put it up right now, and you can go ahead and write it down. And where are you at? Right here. There you go. GabrielSanders. Oh wait, that's not your email address. That's the website, GabrielSanders.com. I should have put that in there. So we'll have that up here before the show's over today, and you can send Gabriel an email and request the PDF for whatever episode you wanted, and he will be delighted to send that to you. So
absolutely, I will. So. I have to keep remembering to look here, not right down there, because otherwise I'm, So anyway, the vicissitudes of live broadcasting. So sure. All right, well, I'm going to switch over my screen here, nice. And let's see if I can do this without having to put on my bug-eyed glasses. Share screens.
That's okay.
And here we go. You should be seeing something.
Right now, I still see the same thing. I see you.
Well, how about if I hit the start button? That's a very, very good
Okay,
idea.
There we go. Let me get rid of my ugly mugshot here. There we go. Okay, I've got your full screen with the left column and then the right side main card showing right now.
Okay, so I want to go full screen here. Okay, there we go.
Beautiful.
And now, do you see the whole thing or do you see a partial?
I see. It looks like the whole thing with a picture. If you want to close out that Skype box, right? You can't see it, can you? On your window.
Did you see the Skype box?
I see the Skype. Yeah, that one that you're just now moving.
Okay, so I'm going to go switch. Let me try.
Actually, you can actually click X on that, and it shouldn't hang up. It's only going to close that one tiny box. Your Skype should stay connected. I have to deal with that all the time.
Okay, so do you see this other box over here as well?
I do now. Yes, I do.
Yeah, I don't want you to see that one. I want you to just see that. Okay, so you see all that?
I do. Now, I still see your Skype box. Like I said, if you want to click the X on it, don't hang up on it, but just click the X on it.
How about if I just move it over here?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, that didn't work. That's sorry, everyone. Okay, here we go. I hope I don't get this disconnected.
If you do, I'll call you back. You're good.
All right, there we go.
All right, beautiful.
Okay, so you've got the full screen there with my Paksuf, as they say, and this is program 4.
We're good.
And on today's menu, we'll talk about sage advice. And this week's saying is eye for an eye. Really? So it's one that's caused definitely some confusion down through the centuries, and we're going to clarify that today. And then I'm going to introduce something new that's called Eshkol Milim, which is a word cluster. And today we're not pulling your leg. You'll see what that means. And then I want to present to you a few paragraphs, really, of a conversation that I had with one of the most remarkable Bible teachers on the planet, Rabbi David Foreman. I said to him many years ago, Rabbi Foreman, you're the closest thing that Judaism has to a Baptist preacher. So, considering your background, you like it. But he's just so clear and so elegant and so practical in his approach. And I'm going to introduce you to where to find out more about the work that he's doing. A number of so many people who've come out of the church are following his Bible teachings and just loving it because it's rich and satisfying. Like the coffee I'm drinking right now.
Hey, likewise.
And then we're going to talk about a fun site for Hebrew learning that I'm going to let you guide us through. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So let's get right to our segment called Sage Advice, Jewish Wisdom for the Week. Our source comes from 2 places, Exodus chapter 21, verse 24, and from the Gemara, the Talmud, known as Baba Kama, the first of the 3 Babas, which are the very heavy legal heavy stuff as far as each of them 10 chapters long. This is from Baba Kama 83a, talks about what we're going to talk about today. So you want to hazard a read on that one?
Okay, sure. You mean what you have it up? I actually pulled up the Bible Exodus. Let me switch back over. Hang on 1 second. Boom. Okay, I've got, no, that's not it. Where'd you go? Now I have to apologize. See, I got my ugly mugshot again. Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right. I can't. It's too small. It's Ein Tachat Ayin. Oh, yeah. Ayin tachat ayin. That's right. I remember you saying it earlier.
Ayin tachat ayin.
Okay, good.
So this is the phrase that we all know as eye for an eye. We're going to talk about this word tachat in a moment, because while it can be translated for or on account of, it has another meaning as well we'll look at. After that, in Exodus, we read shein tachat shein, which is a tooth. And by the way, if you look very carefully, the letter shin here, interesting, the name of this letter is shin, which sounds like shein, tooth, and it looks kind of like a tooth.
Interesting, yeah.
Yad tachat yad.
Now, question real quickly. Yes. The tachat, I thought that meant under.
So it does.
Oh, okay. Sorry, didn't mean to spoiler alert there.
That's quite all right. It's a perfectly good question. And there are others out there that asked the same question.
Okay.
They just didn't get the chance to verbalize it because they're not live on this with us. So
got it.
And then regel tachat regel. So we have 4 nouns here: ayin, shein, yad, regel. And this is this concept of ayin tachat ayin comes up a couple of times in the Chumash, in the 5 books that we talk about. And there are a couple of different ways to look at this. Now, we know that the most, like for example, in the Islamic world, this concept is taken very literally. And there have been some in the Christian world in the past who have attempted to take this literally, but this was never literally applied in Judaism. Never. I mean, think about it for a moment. What possible value is there to someone who was injured? Let's say it was done purposely, maliciously. If someone's eye were, God forbid, put out, how would taking someone else's eye do anything for them? Or tooth, or hand, or leg, or anything else that we're talking about in terms of physical injury? It doesn't do anything. So the sages, and we find this here in Baba Kama 83a, the sages give us an interesting way to look at this and to figure out what this means. Because Tanakh, particularly the Torah, is put together in a way that forces us to ask questions and figure it out. So you asked a very good question here when you said, well, what does this word tachat mean? Doesn't tachat mean under? And yes, it does. So if we take this phrase, ayin tachat ayin, and we look at the letters and I oriented the alphabet here vertically, so you can see ayin, nun, and yud. And those words, those letters, of course, mean, there they are, ayin. But now let's look at the letter under each one of those. What's the letter under yud? It's chaf. Kaf. What's the letter under nun? It's samach. What's the letter under pei? What's the letter under ayin? It's pei. And that spells kesef. What is kesef?
Oh, how cool.
Kesef is money.
Wow.
So here we have it's so in our face in the Hebrew, and this is such a powerful way to illustrate many principles of understanding that can only come if you know the real Word of God in Hebrew.
That is amazing.
So there it is.
Just a quick clarification as you were spelling out the ayin, yud, nun, because it switched from the nun to the nun sofit. And for the ones who don't know or have very little knowledge on the Hebrew, that's same letter, just a final presentation of the letter. So
right, there are 5 letters which have a different form at the end, and so nun is one of them, pei or fei is one of them, kaf happens to be one of them, and tzadi happens to be one of them, and mem happens to be one of them. Nice. So kamenufats is the word that I think of, just to remember those letters. Kamenufats. It doesn't mean anything, but it helps you to remember. So here we see this amazing explanation right in the passage within 3 simple words. Ayin, you look tachat ayin, you look below those, and you find these letters which tell you what it means. So I thought that would be kind of a little mind blower there for today.
Can I confess something to you real fast?
You can. I'm not listening. I'm not a minister anymore, but you can confess anything you want.
I have argued this eye for an eye, the context of it for years, and even after me leaving Christianity and after me leaving the New Testament, I still swore up and down, no, this is not. This is a literal thing, right? But for the first time ever, I just saw something. And granted, it is in the English that I'm looking at it, which means it may not be there in the Hebrew, but it made me look at the context slightly different. In verse 23 of Exodus 21, and it says, if any mischief follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But the key word there is give, not take.
Ah, exactly right.
And that changes everything. Yes. Holy cow.
And since you brought that up, I'm going to bring out one other element that I'm sure it's out there and someone somewhere has talked about it, but I've never seen it talked about. If we look at the first letter of each of these words, okay, ayin, shin, yad, regel, we take ayin, shin, yud, resh. Those letters spell the word ashir, which mean wealth.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. Just ayin to kesef and then sha'ir, which is wealth. Oh boy, wow.
So those four letters spell the word ashir, which means like wealth or wealthy or rich. So we have two witnesses, if you will. Remember that phrase, in the mouth of two witnesses, let every word be established. Mm-hmm. So we have two witnesses right here in the biblical hermeneutic, which is not a 60s rock group, by the way. This is, so we, the word tachat, and telling us to look under these letters, and then right here, the very beginning of each of these, we have a very clear, I was going to say hint, but it's pretty much in our face that something else is being talked about here. And again, this only testifies to the beauty of the Hebrew language, that these things can only be beheld by a knowledge of Hebrew. So anybody who wants to really appreciate the power, the glory, the beauty of the Word has to get familiar with the Hebrew, because that is the real true Word of God. So, no offense to any of those people that hold by the King James only, etc., but
right.
Yeah, another conversation. So let's go to take a look at a word cluster. Now, the word for cluster is eshkol. This is an eshkol. Does that symbol look familiar to anybody out there? Sure, it does. It happens to be the logo of the Israeli Ministry of Tourism.
Oh, cool. I was thinking about the Parshat Meraglim.
Yes, you're exactly right about that. It does come from the Parsha of the Meraglim, the spies, and that would be probably, Kalev and and Yoshua.
Right.
Like taking those back. So we're going to look today. We ended on the word regel. We said regel, tachat, regel. And I got to thinking about that this week, this word regel, and here you see it in big letters. But there's so many. And one of the amazing things about Hebrew are the derivative words from a common root that have so many applications. And today we're going to even look at how some of those sort of bleed into English and other languages as well, but particularly on English today. So, and this is just so, I'm just so amazed. I just shared this with my mother-in-law a few minutes ago, and I have a wonderful relationship with her. You take the word regel, if you were to phonetically spell that in English, how would it be?
Regel, or
yeah, yes, so with the vowels. How would it be? How would that sound out in English?
Regel would be R-A-G-E-L, possibly.
Right, R-E-G-E-L.
Oh yeah, R-E-G.
Spell it backwards.
L-E-G-E-R, Legger.
Okay, now just say the first syllable.
Reg.
No.
Oh, leg.
Ah, isn't that amazing?
Okay.
Because what does the word regel mean?
Leg. Ah, interesting.
And you can see the word, now, I don't think that's accidental. You can see the word leg here, and I'm going to prove that to you in some other ways as we go through this. First, a little vocabulary enrichment. Raglayim means legs, like a pair of legs. Hebrew and other Semitic languages like Arabic use this phenomenon when you have what's known as a dual noun, things that come in pairs, like nostrils, nochrayim, or ears, oznayim, or eyes. We know the word for eye is ayin.
Right.
Einayim is eyes, two eyes. So we see here the word for reglayim. Now, ole regel, a lot of people know the word ole. This is not Spanish, right? Okay, so it's ole regel is a person who is a pilgrim, who makes a pilgrimage, who goes up to Yerushalayim 3 times a year.
Oh, so ole is the root word for Allah, I guess, when it goes up.
Yeah, one who goes up.
Okay,
the word aliyah comes from that.
Got it.
Regil is the word for regular.
Okay.
Regalim are festivals. There are 3 major festivals in the year where the people go up. Sukkot is one of those. Pesach is one of those, and Shavuot is one of those.
Okay.
And they, why? Because the Ole Regel would use his Reglaim on a regular basis to go up to the festivals.
Interesting.
And a Hergel is something that you do that's a habit. And Lehitragel is a verb that means to become accustomed to. Rigul, now we're getting to our friends up here. Rigul means spying. And how did they do that? The Meragel, which is a spy, they went in, they stealthily, but they walked in. Now, there's a famous Talmudic expression we're going to refer to in a moment, and it's used a lot in modern Hebrew today, al regel achat, literally on one leg, which means to do say something quickly or briefly. So if it's sometimes you hear an Israeli say, "Ani gid lecha al regel achat," I'll tell you on one leg, which means I'm going to summarize it very quickly. Well, where did that phrase come from? In the Talmud, the Masechta known as Shabbat, and it's on Daf 31a, Daf Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph. There's a discussion about the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai, and there was an individual that came to Shammai, was the stricter school, and said, "Could you teach me Torah while standing on one leg?"
Oh, right.
And he didn't want to teach him. He didn't think it could be done. So he went off to Hillel, and he asked Hillel, "Could you teach me Torah while standing al regel achat?" And Hillel basically gave him what is known as it's like the negative and Aramaic version of what we have learned before in our previous lives as the golden rule. And he said, "What you don't want done to yourself, don't do to another." And so he said, the rest is commentary, go and learn. Mm-hmm. So that's the concept of al regel achat. By the way, in order to learn those lessons, we have to go through targilim, which are exercises like in schoolwork. Now, this concept of al regel achat, this person who came to both Shammai and to Hillel was not Jewish. So besides the language of the lingua franca of the local lingua franca, let's say it might have been Aramaic or Hebrew, there's a lot of discussion on that. What other languages do you think he might have been familiar with?
Besides Hebrew and Aramaic?
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you.
Sure you can. What were the languages of the day at the time of Hillel and the time of...
Oh, Greek, I guess.
Greek was one, and what was the other one?
Don't know.
Who was in charge?
Oh, the Romans?
Yeah, what did they speak?
Actually, my brain
live and in color.
My brain keeps thinking they spoke Catholic.
On the spot with William turning red.
Yeah. I'm trying to follow you along too. So, okay, so the Romans, what do they speak? I don't know.
Latin.
Huh?
Latin.
Oh, okay. So, well, see, if I had gone with the Catholic thing, I would have eventually figured it out then, because that's kind of the Latin Bible.
Absolutely. So take another sip of coffee.
Actually, I think I might need a glass of wine or something to tone me down. I think I had too much coffee already. Continue, go ahead.
So the question is, was there a double meaning in learning Torah on one foot? Because it's a very strange expression. Now, if you look into the Latin, regula, you can see the word regel there. It means basic principle, rule, or standard. And that's exactly what Hillel gave him. He gave him the whole embodiment of the Torah's teaching in one simple phrase and said the rest is commentary, go and learn. So isn't this fascinating? What you see is the influence of Hebrew as it comes down into other languages. I mean, it's just amazing, as we talked about a couple times ago, and we referred people to the book called The Word on this subject. Right. Now, I want to segue to another subject.
Okay.
Last time we talked about parallelisms, what's known as Hakbalah in the Tanakh. And I want to go just a step further and talk about chiasms a little bit. And chiasms are a structure of A, B, C, and then B, A. So
right.
You're moving towards something in the central and then moving away from it.
So kind of like going into a forest. You're going halfway in, and after you get halfway, you're going back out again.
Yes.
Okay.
So This is Rabbi David Fohrman, who is a friend and mentor of mine, and he has a website called aleph-beta.org. You would be shocked how many Christians and how many pastors are subscribers at $9 a month to this website.
Wow.
I know of a congregation, a church, just outside of Seattle, that I think they have 700 subscribers to this website. And why do they do it? Because they really discovered that Rabbi Fohrman's teaching is so clear. I mean, he's clearly not Christian at all. Okay, I know him very well for several years. But he's found that so many people are coming to him, even Messianics are coming to him for insight because his teaching is so compelling. So he's done a lot of work on the subject of chiasms, and he has an 80-part series just on the book of Genesis alone. Many showcased segments, short segments, 10 minutes each, on the subject of chiasms. So I spoke with him a few weeks ago, and I actually wrote an article about this, and I just lifted a few key paragraphs from this I wanted to go through with you.
Okay.
So I asked him, I said, what's the origin of the word chiasm? It certainly doesn't sound Hebrew. And he said it's not at all. It comes from the Greek letter chi, or chai, which looks like an X, pronounced chi, like the first syllable in kayak. So we know the words charisma and character and chromio. You can see their translations in these. Those are Greek words that have crept into English. And now you understand why a few English words that begin with CH are pronounced with a K, by the way. That's where that comes from, that particular letter. So I asked him, what's the relationship between this letter and the structure of chiasms? And he said that X tells the whole story. What's above is reflected below, and there's a crucial nexus right in the center where the above and the below meet. That's the theoretical side of it. And I said to him, that sounds almost Kabbalistic. You know, what's coming down from is meeting that which is below and in the mitzvah. He said it actually has its roots in a form of gematria known as atbash, wherein the first letters mirror the last letters. The second letter mirrors the next to the last. So in other words, Aleph corresponds to Taf, as you see right here. At the upper and lower extremes, you have the letters Aleph and Taf. The next pair of upper and lower letters are Beit and Shin, followed by Gimel and Resh, Dalet and Kuf, and so on. Now, let's use the same construct of mirroring, but instead of letters, we're going to use thoughts, words, whole texts, and even whole chapters. That's what chiasm does.
Okay.
So I asked him, can we start with a simple example, because this sounds pretty heavy already? And he said, sure. You previously wrote about synthetic parallelisms, pointed out how a short phrase like Hashem loves the righteous can be restated in a second phrase to reflect a similar idea, such as God favors the just. There we have a structure of A1, B1, C1 being reframed synonymously as A2, B2, C2. In a chiasm, we observe a reverse order with the second phrase, C2, B2, A2. In a more fully developed chiasm, we'll also discover the nexus, what we could apply here as D, which stands in the middle between the two phrases, that is A, B, C, D, C, B, A. We could technically call a chiasm an inverted parallelism. That's the theory. So I asked him, are there any short and long ones? He said, yes. By way of example, here's the shortest chiasm in Tanakh, consisting of 6 words from Genesis 9:6, and it's mirrored in the A, B, C, C, B, A pattern. And here's the words. You can read it in the phonetic here if you want to also. Shofech dam ha'adam, ba'adam damo yishafech. Shofech dam ha'adam, ba'adam damo yishafech. And it's easy to hear it also, even if you're not familiar so much with the Hebrew. And those who can read the Hebrew at even a basic level can clearly, though, see the chiasm here. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't come out so clearly in English, by the way, but in Hebrew it's crystal clear. You have shofech and yishafech. You have dam, which is blood. Mm-hmm. This is damo, which is blood. Ha'adam, ba'adam.
Right.
There it is. Mm-hmm. So A, B, C, C, B, A. Very clear.
It's kind of like the music training thing, la 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 la, whatever you know how they do that.
So you keep your day job there, okay? So.
I know, I need to, right?
So I've said to Rabbi Fohrman, you've taught that chiasms can be much bigger, and he said, yes, very much so. We finished our collective reading of Sefer Shemot recently. This was a few weeks back. It contains a giant chiasm which spans several whole chapters. My team produced a video on alifbeta.org to vividly illustrate it. And when you understand where that chiasm begins and ends, and what the nexus point is in the middle, you won't see Sefer Shemot the same again, the book of Exodus. I know that because so many people have told me, he says. There are many more examples throughout Tanakh. We have an 80-part series called Genesis Unveiled at alifbeta.org, wherein the chiasms figure prominently throughout the text. The Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden narrative is a chiasm. Noach and the vineyard is a chiasm. The Akedah, the offering up of Isaac, is a chiasm. And there are more. Going beyond Chumash, going beyond the 5 books of Moses, Sefer Yonah, the prophet Jonah, is a chiasm. So is Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther. And that's one that I'd like you to look at here for just a moment. I actually took this from John Levinson. And you can see the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it goes back up on the other side. But it all proceeds to and from this royal procession. But the real nexus in here that triggers the royal procession in chapter 6, I believe it's verse 1, is the dream that Achashverosh had. So it all leads up to that dream and away from that dream. And you can see the brilliant balance of correspondences between these aspects. This is chiastic structure at its finest. So I'm not going to give time for everybody to look at that. If you want the PDF of this, I'm happy to give it to you. And I'll tell you how to get that at the end. So
okay, for any of you creative ones that know how to play with your computer a little bit, you can, on the video, you can pause it on that screen and print screen and actually print that off on some sort of a document too.
That's right. So I'd like us to then segue now as we conclude to this fun site for Hebrew learning that we talked about.
You got about 3 minutes.
Okay, at teachmehebrew.com.
You want me to pull that up for you?
Go ahead, please.
Okay,
and
sir.
I'll let you guide that.
Okay, very good. You just tell me where to click.
Okay, so I'm going to jump over there with you at the same time. So
okay, sure.
I'll pull that up on my screen. Okay, so at Teach Me Hebrew, this is a, you know, it's a secular site. It's I don't advocate a lot of the music that's there because some of it's Israeli rap and so forth. It's not really spiritually uplifting, but the content that's here is certainly useful. So if you look at the tab for Learn Hebrew, and put your mouse on the Learn Hebrew, and there's a drop-down menu. You'll see some things that are very interesting. Put it on basic Hebrew just to see what jumps out at everybody. So you should be able to see that there are 500 basic Hebrew words, and this should be your first objective. If you've learned how to read, you know a few words already, this is your objective. And to get to 500 basic Hebrew words, you want to focus on doing 10 words a week. And if you take off the weekends, that's 2 words a day during the week, or cram a bit and do, 5 and 5 on the weekend. There are 100 basic Hebrew phrases here, 100 basic Hebrew verbs, numbers, time, and all of it downloadable to you. There are lots of great lessons here on grammar, some dialogues, and many of these are recorded. You can actually hear them. It's phonetically presented as well. And then the last thing I want to look at is a look at the Hebrew frequency list at the very bottom of this drop-down menu. And it's here's your long-term goal, 10,000 most commonly used words. And if you already know some Hebrew, but you'd like to test yourself against what you might not know, this list is put together not alphabetically, but by the frequency of the words as they appear in the language, and they're done in blocks of 400 words. So you can walk yourself through this and take a look. It's also phonetically presented as well as written in Hebrew, and you can kind of you can gauge your own aptitude or proficiency right now against this list, and it's available in a PDF. You can print the whole thing off, and that's your long-term assignment. And quite frankly, you don't need to learn 10,000 words. If you learn 5,000 words or 2,000 words, 3,000 words, basic conversations can be done very well with 2,000, 2,500 words. I certainly did it. Didn't necessarily understand all the questions, but I could certainly represent myself where I was from and have an intelligent conversation. So nice. That's pretty much it. And how to connect with me, GavrielSanders@gmail.com. That's Gavril. No, that's not how you do it. Gavril. There we go. Sanders@gmail.com. Gavril. Sanders@gmail.com. Closing word from you, William.
I just want to say thank you. That was very fun and very intuitive. I can't wait to get in and actually go back and rewatch the video and just check it out, because that's really neat to see. And encouragement, by the way, you can take off screen share now. The encouragement to you is that you don't have to, you can still be in elementary learning Hebrew and still get this part, because you can see patterns just by looking at the letters, even though you may not know what they are. So this can still help you get an idea on how to wrap your head around things. So don't feel like just because you may be more on a beginner level that this intermediate level won't be a blessing to you, because I think it actually will. I think it'll be awesome.
So, well, that is exactly what I had in mind when I was putting these elements together. Am I back with you now?
Yes, you are. Very good, sir.
Okay. This is exactly what I had in mind. Was I wanted to give something that everybody could get something out of. I wanted the people who are at the beginner level to feel that there's an energy to compel them to go through, like to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific through the Panama Canal, the locks of learning, so to speak. And for those who already have some familiarity, to see that are expanding areas that you can go into for your own enrichment. So that's what we're doing with this. I'm not your sage on the stage, as I say. I'm just your guide on the side. And anything I can do to be helpful, if you have questions, whatever, I'm here. Write me for the PDF. Tell me about your own experiences in Hebrew, your aspirations, your frustrations, your perspiration. No perspirations. But anything else that's related to Hebrew. By the way, I want to say to everybody as well, as the music comes up, I guess, in a moment, I found a fantastic article that's well worth reading. So please, I'd like to send you the link to that. It's from, I think it's from the Jerusalem Post. Yes, previous article on that. Very, very critical with relationship between language and Jewish continuity. So it's something everybody should take a look at, even if you're not Jewish. Who knows? You may be someday. Right?
Amen.
To me, I didn't expect it. So, all right. Have a wonderful week. Shavua Tov. And may Hashem give you, as I love to say, Hashem oz la'amu yiten, Hashem yivarech et amo b'shalom. May Hashem give courage to His people, might to His people, and bless them with peace.
Very nice of you.
From New York.
Shalom, shalom, Gabriel. Shalom, everyone. See you next week.